Hey everyone, in this video we're looking at Christmas Carol, focusing on the theme of greed versus generosity. So, Charles Dickens presents greed as a freezing force that isolates people from humanity, while generosity is shown as the only way to find true happiness. Through Scrooge's transition from a miser to a philanthropist, Dickens argues that wealth is useless if it's clutched and only becomes valuable when it is shared. A key quote is a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. This is a famous list of verbs, as every word describes someone who is holding on to money so tightly that they are hurting themselves and others. Another one is external heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. Here, greed has made Scrooge numb. Because he only cares about profit, he doesn't feel the warmth of human kindness anymore. We then have his wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't do any good with it. This shows that Fred explains that money is pointless if it just sits in a bank. It only has value when it is used to help people. The next one is I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. Here, when Scrooge buys a giant turkey, it's his first act of generosity. He's finally letting go of his money to feed others. Another key quote is a golden idol displaced me. Here, Belle, who's Scrooge's old fiancée, says he replaced her with gold. This shows how greed destroys love and relationships. A context link, which is a real history. So, the first context link is Industrial Revolution. At this time, business owners were making huge amounts of money, but their workers were living in extreme poverty. Dickens thought this greed was a disease in society. Another context link is the miser stereotype. So in Victorian literature, the miser, which is someone who hoards money, was a common villain. Dickens used Scrooge to show that being a miser is a choice that can be undone. Another link is charity. So Victorian London had no welfare state, which means there was no free healthcare or benefits. If the rich weren't generous, the poor simply starved. This is why Scrooge's change is so important, because it's a matter of survival for people like the Cratchits. He is a grade 9 model paragraph, and the question is, how does Dickens explore the contrast between greed and generosity? So we have Dickens uses cold and hot imagery to show the difference between greed and generosity. At the start, Scrooge's greed is described as low temperature that he carries around with him. He's so focused on scraping and clutching his money that he has become frozen and robotic. However, Dickens contrasts this with the generosity of characters like Fezwick. Even though Fezwick spent but a few pounds on his party, Dickens shows that the happiness he gives is as if it cost a fortune. This proves that true generosity isn't about the amount of money spent, but the spirit in which it is given. By the end, when Scrooge becomes as good a friend as any man, his frozen heart has finally melted. Dickens's message is that greed leads to a lonely death, but generosity leads to a life full of warmth and connection.